been your toughest moment as a director? David.
I'm going to let Ben take this one.
Most of them. Most of the moments I've had as a director have been very difficult for me.
What in particular stands out?
Well, you know, I just feel that for me, it's very difficult, daunting, anxiety-inducing job. I mean, yeah, there are nice moments, but the night before is tough, the morning is tough, standing around acting like you know how you want the blocking to work is tough, you know. I find it to be a very difficult job, and it requires a lot of preparation. That's why I really admire all these guys who at least make it look very, very easy.
For me, my most difficult moment, I was 14 years old. I was directing my brother Ben in my second movie called Bomber Jacket, and this involved my brother finding an old Second World War bomber jacket in his cupboard and putting it on, and as he zips it up, he's transported to a Second World War airfield where he's haunted by Second World War bombers. So I'm on the location. I have 100 feet of film, which I'm running at 16 frames a second, which gives me about a shooting ratio of about 1.2 to 1. And my brother, who's 4 years younger, suddenly realizes that he has a power over me that never in his life before he ever imagined, which is that if he intentionally makes a mistake on a take, my 100 foot is going to be whittled down, and very soon I'll have no film left. And so he entered into a very central debate, saying, yeah, but if I zipped up my jacket, I couldn't suddenly be somewhere else, because that's just rubbish, isn't it? And he basically sort of took me on a sort of whole philosophical debate about the impossibility of fantasy, and he literally had me in tears, and that still remains my most stressful.
How old were you?
14.
And he was already directing.
And then a very accomplished, sophisticated story.
Any difficult directing?
No, actually, the telling of the story, dealing with the actors, dealing with the cameraman and everything, that's actually to me, that's the easy part. That's the part where I think I was meant to do this. That's where I kind of flying the most. It's just, it's the shouldering of the entire production and leading the army and inspiring everybody every day, and not you have to keep inspiring everybody. If you want to have a tantrum, you want to just say from time to time, like, I fucking had it. Yes. But you can't say that because everyone really is counting on you to get them up that hill, and so you always you have to keep forward. So to me, the directing part is the easy part. It's actually just not compromising on your art, but also keeping a disciplined thought in your head is the hardest part to me.
Have you ever had a temper tantrum, or?
We all get frustrated.
Well, speak for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't had a temper tantrum. It's like, I would think of an actor having a temper tantrum. You can't really have a temper tantrum that much and still be a boss that's respected it, at least as far as I'm concerned. At least this, I guess. But at some point, though, people got to know that there's a penalty for fucking up. And
what happens when you're dealing with an executive who's like, okay, you've done your film. Well, I mean, I don't know where Django stands at the moment, but when we last heard it was running at 3 hours or something, and Harvey was pressuring you to bring it lower. How do you deal with a situation like that?
Oh, it was just, it's not a big deal. I didn't want a 3-hour movie either. It was simply weird, it's a big epic and everything. So I figured it would be around 2:45, and that's what it is. But the thing is, it's like, when you're cutting it down, at that moment in time, before you watch it with an audience, it's too long, but you can't imagine taking anything out. So then you watch it with an audience, and then all of a sudden, oh wow, that is kind of boring now, or oh no, this is not as suspenseful by the time we got to it as it needs to be, and it's because you fatigued everybody before. But you can only go so far in the avid room. On your own. At some point, you have to watch it with an audience, and then literally 15 minutes just comes flying out. Where before you couldn't imagine a minute leaving.
You sit through one of those screenings where all of a sudden like everyone's bored, and you go back and just like.
I mean, literally, you can't I can't imagine where else it would go. I mean, the story can never make sense if you take one more minute out of it, and then you watch the movie and 15 minutes are gone by noon the next day.
But Harvey's known for Harvey Scissorhands.
Well, if he treated me that way, I wouldn't be working with him for 20 years. So that's
true.
I welcomed him into the edit room, and I will go toe to toe with anybody on any note, and I welcome all collaboration because I'm not precious about it, and I'm not going to have you drain the energy out of something, but let's try it, or we'll just disagree honestly about it. But it always ends up making the movie better. And you were telling me a story about that. And Bradley Cooper was in our editing room. Harvey came in, and Jay Cassidy was a fantastic editor. But you can't be precious. That's my biggest lesson.
They came in and said what?
Well, they hang out and we look at cuts and we talk about what's working. And they come up with ideas. We come up with ideas to try things. We only had 33 days to shoot our picture, but you even then have more than you know what to do with, and you even have more scenes, like Quentin was saying. You have scenes where you're like, oh, how can I live without this scene? And then you're like, well, I think you can live very well without this scene.
Sorry, Ben.
No, I was just going to say, actually being an actor was a real advantage for me in having that discipline, because I'd been through so many experiences where I was in the movie and had somebody directing, and I'd go and watch some cut that was like, very long, and I would go to the director and say, man, I'm in the movie and I'm bored. So surely the audience is going to be, oh, I don't know what we can lose. I'm like, the whole thing where, and you kind of make that gesture of like, why don't we take out my whole speech to start with? And why don't we take out, and so I always said to myself, I'm not going to be that director who wasn't willing to examine his own movies, in a ruthless way. Maybe you do keep it all, but I think you only can really know that you should keep it all if you've looked at it and scrutinized it and been very tough.
No, but I find it very strange was when I'm shooting, I have a incredibly powerful acquisitive drive. I mean, every day is about, when I'm shooting a wide shot, I may already be thinking of another wide shot that might be better than the one I'm doing, and I'm always shooting in and through a subject towards a better way of telling the story. And your neurosis is never having enough. And then the moment, almost overnight, you go into the editing room, you suddenly don't hold on to everything you try to acquire, and you go into a different mode where you're just shedding stuff very immediately from day one. And I always kind of think, where was that guy when I was shooting? Because that guy would really give me a break when I'm shooting, because that constant fear that you haven't caught it. And I think, in answer to your first question, I think probably the thing that makes directing very demanding is, when I'm sitting either operating the camera or looking at the monitor, I, as well as seeing what I'm seeing, I'm also seeing an imaginary version of what I'd like it to be, and you're always trying to get those two to coalesce. And when you can't imagine anything else, then you've got it. But you're always in this agony of doing this inside your head, this swap between what you've got and what you could have, what you got, what you could have, and the fight against time to let those images coalesce and become one is a constant sort of source of pressure in your head.
And what's been the worst moment for you? And do you
in my career or in general?
In filming, in your life, yeah.
I'm gonna have to replace someone.
Oh, really?
You asked that question. The most painful experience I ever had was once I had to replace a composer.
On which film?
I won't tell you, but that hurts. I have hits. I have not so hit. But I was always proud of them, proud of everybody work on them. We make our best effort, but something like that happened. I feel defeated. You're choosing between a good person or a loyal person or a good artist. Not so much under the studio pressure, it's just something's not clicking. And I want to be the one who tell the person. I don't want the studio play the bad guy or producer or anybody. It has to be man on man. And that was... The job can be done. I'm sure you've done this before. But right after you do that, I don't know, it might take 10 years or maybe never overcome that.
Did you
feel like a cock being defeated.
Yeah. Did you become friends again afterwards, or?
It took a few years. And recently I chose to work with him again.
Oh, good.
And it's a big mental obstacle to overcome. It was so hard. It's like the hardest thing I experienced. Once you get beat, it's like a cock being really hurt.
That happened to me
and
with John Bryan.
How do you overcome that and prove that you're not defeated? That was
it happened to
the
you
hardest thing for me.
With John who?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you done? No. John Bryan, who's a wonderful composer, had composed music for one of my earlier films, and then on The Fighter, he came to see an early cut and said, well, your source is your score, you don't need a score. I said, well, we need a very light touch. Knowing that he's a man who writes strong melodies, and as friends who wanted to work together, we then proceeded into this bad idea of him writing melodies that were very strong that did not belong in the movie, and I had to not use it, which was heartbreaking.
Have you ever had to fire an actor?
I've fired a couple of actors. It is horrible. It's the worst thing in the world, because you know as an actor what it's like. And I mean, you work, you audition, you get there, and then you get the part, you know, and then some. And when I was 13, I was a child actor. The director threatened to fire me. He said, they want to fire you. I think you can do it, but, you know, producers want to fire you. You have to have some more energy. I mean, so that traumatized. I was 13 years old, and I went around in the fear of being fired. And with this movie, it was the only time I really fired people, but I had to do it. I had all these Persian actors who were supposed to be speaking Farsi, and oftentimes they would audition in English, and I would say, you can speak Farsi, right? Yeah, yes. And then I had a guy came in for a really crucial part, and on the day, you know, we were blocking the scene. And, you know, we had our whole little group of people and the thing, and this guy's got this sort of mini speech. And the guy did it, and it was just terrible. You know, it was like the exact thing you don't want. He was sort of like, you know, twisting the mustache and being the Iranian villain and having this sort of accent and adding all these flourishes of, and so a couple times I said, let's just like, don't do anything, you know, just do nothing and say your lines, let's try that. And he was like wanting to get on camera and had this thing of himself. And just previous to that, there was this guy who had a little bit in the movie. I mean, just done a little thing, but it was so nice. He had like a couple of lines, and it was so kind of good. And you know, you can see a line or two and recognize something really good. And I thought, God, he's so great. You know, isn't he? And a couple of the actors said, did you notice that guy was kind of cool? And then when this other guy was blowing it, and not just blowing it, but like hamming it up in a way that made it easy to say, like, no, you know, you're trying to ruin my movie. I went to the other actor and said, like, I want you to look at the sides. Just read this scene. And he kind of read through the scene. And I said, can you do this? He looked at me and said, I can do it. I said, all right, you're in. And I didn't exactly fire the other actor. I went to him and said, I don't think you're right for this. Actually, after looking at it, you know, I need somebody much more coarse, and you're very distinguished, and, you know, you're too handsome for this part. And that's always what, you know what I mean, your penis is too big for you to play this part. And so then I told him that, and I said, but I have another part for you, like out front, you know, like playing the, you know, front of the airport or whatever, a couple of lines. And he said, if it's not as many lines as this, I'm not doing it. I said, been nice working with you. Yeah.
I actually kind of had a similar situation on this movie where it was we had these slaves in the background from Louisiana in the cotton fields, and they all had these really cool characters. You know, just, you know, they don't have anything to do other than be in the background, and you see them, but, you know, but the people were just fantastic, and they really try to make their characters very distinguishable. And there was this one guy in particular that I thought was really terrific, and I didn't feel like casting an actor from Los Angeles for a bigger role in this thing, and I thought maybe this guy could be the guy to do it. He was an extra that was just real standing out. And so I had the first AD go over to him and say something to the effect of, Quentin's thinking about you for a role here, but he wants you to be able to read the script so you know what you're going to have to do, and just to make sure that you're okay with it. Because, you know, we were doing really rough stuff in this movie. And he's like, I can tell you right now, I'm okay with it. I don't need to read shit. I'm okay with it. You got the part, mate.
Have any of you been fired as directors? Gus?
Fired as a director?
Yeah. Kicked off a project?
While you're directing? Jeez. Well, developing, yeah. I think I ran into some problems with one film.
What project?
Where on Milk, the first incarnation of Milk, I had replaced Oliver Stone. And there was a script, but I kept wanting to, like, rewrite it, and which was okay, except they kind of needed somebody to just step in and start directing. Robin Williams is going to be Harvey, and as soon as I said, well, I want to rewrite, they're like, because the money's right there, Warner Brothers is ready to let go, and they're like, okay. And so we rewrote it, and then I said, okay, well, the rewrite's not really good enough, and they're like, so they were like, okay, we got to get somebody else. So it wasn't really anybody's fault. It was just like I couldn't come up with the script that I wanted, and I couldn't really do Oliver's version, you know, because he's Oliver. So
because it's Oliver's version, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
So, yeah.
Have you ever been fired or threatened with being fired as a director?
I've been not offered a lot of movies. Is that the same thing?
That really surprised me when we spoke, you know, a few weeks ago, and you said that after Gone Baby Gone, which you know I'm a fan of, that the offers weren't coming.
Yeah, I didn't really.
How do you guys deal with rejection and failure? you take it personally? Does it hurt, David? How do you...
Quentin never has failed.
Well, you struggled for a while before you made your first film.
Yeah, but that's a different guy, all right? We're talking about once you're making them, that's a different thing, all right? If we're talking about the 20 years when I was, working in a video store, I couldn't get anything.
20 years in a video
I wasn't
store.
working. 20 years of my life before.
But did you think, oh, I'm never going to make it? And how did you deal with that?
I didn't entertain that thought. If I did, I'd probably own a video store now and it'd be out of business right now, and I don't know what the hell I'd be doing. No, I just figured I couldn't have a fallback plan because I couldn't allow myself to fall back. I had to all or nothing. I had to just keep going on. One of the things that actually, the weirdest thing though is wanting to, you're talking about just directing, and there's wanting to be a director before you've ever directed before, and they're two different dudes. And the weird thing about wanting to be a director, wanting to be your art form, aside from just going and getting a 16mm camera or a Super 8 camera and making something, which definitely is in your power and definitely is more in people's power now to actually test out these theories. But, in the 80s, when I was a young guy, you wanted to be a director, you thought you were this artist, but there's no proof of it at all. All right, if you want to act, you can go and you can act in something and see if there's actually something there. If you want to write, you can get a piece of paper and write and see if there's something there. When you actually want to direct a feature film and you've never done anything, it's all theory. And so even at at 3 o'clock in the morning, from time to time, you wonder, is this a mistake? Do I really have it? I don't. I think I do, but it's all theory.
At the beginning or the whole time?
No, not while I was making the movie.
So what about later in your career, or just at the beginning, or does that?
Yeah, I'm simply, literally talking about before I've ever done anything. But I'm still that was still 10 years of preparation before I was actually on a set.
What movie was that?
No, Reservoir Dogs is my first thing.
What scene was it?
No, guys. I'm not saying. I'm not saying I felt that way on Reservoir Dogs.
All right, so I'm having doubts before you ever worked.
Yeah, before I have, this mountain I was trying to climb, before you even know you're a mountain climber, and I'm giving up everything else in my life in order to go forward on that.
Did you get that finance because of Harvey Keitel? Was that?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
In that respect, I think I still pinch myself and believe, am I really a movie director like those guys from the guys that I always looked up to? And it's easier to see it in all of someone else, other people. But I still feel like I'm still learning. And my greatest struggle as a failure in any way was losing my own way. You can be given enough rope in this business, to hang yourself if you're not careful. And I see it all the time, and I experienced it where, you start overthinking things, and you try to make things too interesting, or you become too particular. Nothing feels right. No project feels right. And when I came out of that with keep it raw, man, keep it real, keep it emotional.
When did you feel you lost?
That was around Huckabees. I think after Three Kings. After Three Kings, I had 3 movies that had done successfully well, and then I was the pressure. I overthought what I was going to do next, and I think I had my head up my ass on that movie, and I came out of it, and my whole life changed. I got divorced. I had kind of a wilderness period. I made a film that never was finished, which it was unconscionable because this financier kept running out of money, which is that was the nadir of everything for me. It's wow, man, I don't think it's going to get worse than this. And down in South Carolina, with the money keep running out. And then so when I got the chance, and I wrote the film Silver Linings, Sidney Pollack gave me the book 5 years ago, and I thought I was going to get to make that. And then Harvey wasn't ready to make that. They didn't have the money. And I thought, when am I going to get my chance? Because that was a personal story to me because of my son and everything. So I got to make The Fighter, which I never expected. And that's what really gave me a chance to, that's a project 10 years ago I might have looked at and said, I don't know, what is this? This is a story that I feel I've seen before. I would have been above it, but I said, why don't you try to do this really good? See if you can do this from the heart and mean it, and see how that comes out for you, and bring what you got to this, about the sisters or the mother, and then I got to do Silver Linings after that. So now I feel like I'm doing what I finally think I can do good work at, And so I feel like that took me a while to focus on that and to get, and I thank God, because my worst moment is not knowing what you want to do. That to me
But
is
are
the
you
worst.
afraid that there's like, if you look at many great directors, I don't know if you, I mean, many of you know film history better than I do, but it strikes me that there's a period where they do great work, and then they don't. And it's often brief. Renoir, 1929 to 37.
Rules of the Game, Grand Illusion.
By the way, I love that you named those as your favorite films when we did the
Yeah,
interview.
they're great movies, yeah.
And then after 37, nothing was even close to those films. Are you afraid that you might have talent for a moment, and then it's gone?
I don't know. I think it does come back to the. You have to keep people around you who are going to be absolutely brutally honest to you, and I wonder whether what happens to some people is they get to a place where they don't want to hear they don't want to hear brutal truths anymore about their work, and I think all of us only do good work. I imagine because we have people in our.
What's the most brutal thing anybody said to you?
I don't know. I'm just thinking even in the my family are my most important. My brother, my sister, my mum, dad, they're always my sort of first critics, and they are totally harsh. They don't care about anything, and a couple of them came to my mix review last week, and they were like, "You've got pacing problems." I'm like, "How can I have pacing problems? I've finessed this." So again, they said, "Well, it doesn't matter. It feels too fast." And I realised that it was. Because the mix was too complicated, and a cut that had been playing, had become too dense, and the fact the fact I'm lucky enough to have people who, 3 days before I meant to finish my final mix, are going to tell me that there's that I've got an issue that I need sorting out, and as a result, I then found a solution. The cut was playing, and it was a sound mix issue. I don't know. So I can only imagine that there might be a risk that you start to believe it was all you, and then if you start to believe that,
what's the most brutal thing anybody said to you?
Well, like we were talking about the hardest thing for a director. I also experienced like making a film at 14 with my sister, which I think that was in fact the hardest, because your brothers and sisters they're not exactly with you, and they don't really want to be doing it in the first place, usually, at least in the case of my sister.
And they don't respect you.
They don't respect you. So you really have to coax them into it, and then it's hard. Like, they're not actors, so it's hard to direct.
It's actually good training.
But then,
It's really good
you cast your brother in your first movie and not in the backyard.
He'd get the sides and go, this is shit. Let's not do this. They can't
He
do
was
this.
very good.
I mean, there was a scene one day with my brother where he's like, I thought, okay, we set the shot up. We're going to see down the hall. You're going to come into the room, talk to the girl. So he gives this thing, I don't know if I would do that, blah, blah, blah. We have this whole discussion. I said, look, I want to just feel like what your instincts are, follow that and let's try it, and then let's figure it out from there. Okay, we start to shoot. My brother walks in, goes to another room. Everyone's standing there filming an empty hallway. Nothing's happening. And they just, dude, what are you doing? He's like, you said do my instincts. Don't walk into another room where no one can see you. It was tough. But I cast because he's such a great actor that I felt like, and I think part of why he is a great actor is because he will walk into a room where he knows the camera isn't, whether it's to fuck with you or because he really thinks it's real. I think there are dangers as a director, the danger of I think if you lose touch with things and you become insulated. I heard David Fincher say once that, like, if you're not on the scout van at 8 a.m. and it's cold and you're in Detroit, and like, then you're not engaged in filmmaking. And I think there's something to that. And I think there's something to a really big time studio executive when I first got out here as an actor told me, he was like, in a sort of cavalier and slightly dismissive way, directors are like tuning forks. Come out, they make their first movie, bing, hit the fork. And for a while, it stays in tune. And then, at a certain point, it just goes out of tune, and it never comes back. At the time, I was like, well, I don't care about that. I'm an actor. Do actors go out of tune? But they just go out of favor. But I think that view exists about directing. And,
how do you stay sane in this business?
But I also do think there's a very curious and complex relationship between time pressure and instinct, in that we all hate the time pressure, and the time pressure is, it's the hidden narrative of most films, is that the audience, when they're watching it, don't realise that most of the decisions have been made in relation to time pressure, and that you're fighting this battle with a ghost that the audience never see.
But yet
it's the time pressure that allows you to means that the only thing you can do is work on instinct. And in the end, I'd prefer to work fast and work on instinct than have the time to kind of go, second guess my instinct and get neurotic about my instinct. And so it's a very curious relationship.
I think the daily pressure for a director is just the blocking. Because before the blocking, you're kind of playing around, but then you have to actually have blocking of some kind. And that's, once you get the blocking, you shoot according to the blocking, and everything's kind of easy. But that
fall into
Mount
places,
Everest of the morning is like where the blocking, where you actually like mark down where people are going to be at what time, especially if there are a bunch of people. I mean, if there's four or five people.
How do you stay sane in this business? I mean, you live in Portland, so you put some physical distance. And Ang, well, you were living upstate New York, but no longer. How do you stay away from the pressures and the people? I mean, on the one hand, people telling you the greatest thing on the planet, then the next one they're telling you the worst person, or unfortunately,
there's no security.
Go ahead. No, you're looking at me. It's fine.
Well, I'm looking at you because that thing I wrote in the story that was picked up that we both feel bad about. But,
you have to for me, I took Bob Dylan, what he said publicly, he said, you can't read reviews. Personally, I take that, I don't read nothing. All right, except for you, of course, Steve. No, I don't read nothing, and you just live your life with your family, and you have a sane life. You go home and you focus on things that are not yourself, your friends, and I mean that's the only way to be sane. And you and just be grateful that you have the privilege to make a motion picture, which any of us getting to make the kinds of pictures we make. That's special. I mean, these are all very particular pictures.
As a privilege. Because most of our friends, like 99%, they don't get to make movies.
Let alone movies like these movies.
Filmmakers.
How have you managed to stay removed from the Hollywood craziness?
I stay in New York.
You think if you moved to LA, it would change you?
Probably, because there's so many. Not because they're not realistic people. Because they talk in a certain way, there's a certain culture. Everybody I will know here, like 99% is movie related. So that probably will drive me crazy.
Did you feel added pressure on this film just because the budget was higher than you've worked with? Describe that well.
You talk about sanity, because there's a section in my movie when Pi is adrift, he's fighting sanity the last stage. It is hard. But for some reason, to me, it's actually working, just to create insanity to stay insane, stay in sanity. Now, when you're focused, when you're trying to make something work.
You're not doing a 5, 10, 20 million picture, you're doing I think it's $120 million Pi.
It's crazy, but then when you try to make something work, you think about blocking every day, 200 people look at you when you're working, that's when you're sane. It's in between that's crazy.
Was the studio like driving you nuts?
They can, but if it gets in the way, you have to deal with them. You have to overcome them.
How?
Same thing as there's no rule. If there's a method, everybody be following it. Like day by day, it's personal. Like how do you overcome?
Everybody was listening. Like, everybody, please give me a tip.
You have it. Yeah.
Everybody's like an actor. When you first meet them, there's like a mountain you have to climb through in different ways. You have to know all method, all kinds of actor. From most experienced to the layman, you just have to deal with them. But there's a movie you want to make, that's what keeps you in the region of being sane, because you have to do it. Once that is done, that's when you go insane, and then you look for the next thing. And everybody can drive insane.
How do you go insane? You look like the most sane person I've ever met. How do you personally go insane?
Just on the surface, I look zen out. And
does your wife say, why are you like locking yourself in the dungeon? How does it manifest itself?
I think that on the surface, I can zen out. I can do all kinds of meditation, try to detach from, pretending that's just the color of life, not the essence. All this bubbling, this is will go away, doesn't mean anything. I can do that, but that's not the real reason that keeps me sane. It's the next movie I want to do. Then there's a drive, then I go about that. I think that's what kept me. There's a purpose, there's a focus, fear. They're like the Richard Parker, the tiger that's in the same, whether you're in the same boat. Those studio executive, you're afraid of the big budget. Those fears, those anxiety, you go to a test that doesn't test well.
Gus, do you feel fear?
Yeah, that visceral feeling sort of keep you alert and alive.
Gus?
Yeah, I was just thinking of the Dennis Hopper had said that something harder than making a movie is not making a movie, because I think making a movie is like such an intense chess game that you're really in the throes of it, and then you're really happy when it's all over. But that lasts only a few weeks, and then or months maybe, or maybe a year, and then you're happy to be not working. But then somebody calls you on the phone, and you're happy to just pick it up, whatever it is.
I had this strange thing on. I finished my mix at 7 a.m. yesterday, and you kind of dream of Les Miserables is such an oil tanker. It's so complicated to wrangle into the place I wanted it to be, and so you kind of fantasize about the end. And then when I got a few hours away, I just had an incredible sense of loss, and realised that this sort of fantasy I have of how amazing I'd feel when I finished was already slipping away as I approached it, because you actually. You mourn the chess game. You mourn the active process of making a film. And once you've finished it, it's not. You're in a different phase.
Quentin, because you have had a lot of success. Are you afraid it will end?
No, not at all. But part of the reason I'm not afraid of it going to end is I don't intend to be a director deep into my old age.
Wait a minute, that's bad news for everybody.
This is a Steven Soderbergh philosophy. When are you going to stop, and what are you going to do?
I'll probably just I'll probably I'll probably just be a writer. All right, I'll just write novels, and I'll write film literature and film books and subtextual film criticism, things like that.
In how long do you plan to make that change?
Well, part of the reason I'm feeling this way is I can't stand all this digital stuff. This is not what I signed up for, and so just even the fact that digital presentation is the way it is right now, it's just
what does that mean to you?
It means it's television in public. It's just television in public. That's how I feel about it. I came into this for film.
I don't know
digital projection as well.
Digital projection. That's exactly what I mean.
Because the film's over. I mean, there's no film projectors in the country anymore.
But I insist on. But I won't shoot digital. I haven't shot digital.
No, I'm not talking about shooting digidigital.
Do you shoot digital?
No, I hated that stuff.
I only shoot film. Yeah.
But to me, just even digital projection it's over. As far as I'm concerned,
so for that reason, you stop making films.
Yeah, it's TV in public to me, And
why do you keep calling it public? What is that?
TV in public.
TV in public.
TV in public. I see.
TV in public, And so the thing about it is, yeah. So I mean, so if I'm going to do TV in public, I'd rather just write one of my big scripts and do it as a miniseries for HBO, and then I don't have the time pressure that I'm always under, and I get to actually use all the the one time I always write these huge scripts that I have to kind of. My scripts aren't like blueprints. They're not novels, but they're novels written with script format, more or less, And they're not blueprints for your day. And so I'm literally adapting the movie every day. I'm adapting the script into a movie every day. There's an Anna Karenina movie coming out now. I'm sure they wrote a script, and that was what they did every day. My version is to show up on the set with Anna Karenina and adapt it every day. And so this stuff goes away and stuff, all that stuff, and so a different animal comes out at the end of it. But that's kind of fun. I like that process about it. But the one movie that I was actually able to use everything, where you actually have the entire breadth of what I wrote, spent a year writing, was the 2 Kill Bill movies, because it's 2 movies. So I could use everything in that, So, if I'm going to do another big epic thing again, it would probably be like a 6-hour miniseries or something.
I have 2 questions. One is, do you is your work process the same? You went in with a very locked script for Les Miserables, but for the rest of you, like Gus and Ang, do you change the script or play with it every day? David, do you?
Can I speak of it? I don't. I feel like Quentin. Like I felt I was, in many ways, adapting one of the greatest books ever written, which is Victor Hugo's novel, and a lot of the work we did was to go back to the novel and enrich the musical even further through the novel. And I felt exactly what Quentin felt, that I was wrestling with the great novel every day.
You didn't change it on the set?
Yes, sometimes. Yeah.
What about the rest of you?
To me, it's a living organism that I'm always trying to make better, and trying to make everybody feel it. And sometimes beautiful things appear to you that you would never have imagined. In one of, the climax scenes of our movie, great things start. It's wonderful. It's almost like it's a living. You're watching living theater, and you say, "Oh my gosh, here's your character." Robert De Niro and Paulie Herman, you guys should start arguing this way. And you create another piece of the scene right then. That's a beautiful thing when that happens.
And how about you?
I don't change script a lot, but I do. Basically, I think script is not like a play. It's not an art form by itself to me. It's just blueprint, a step up towards filmmaking.
While shooting, did you change anything in Life of Pi?
Oh yeah. I did very good plans. I pre-visualized the whole movie just to go about business. So I spent a year doing that. So for the ocean part, which is the biggest part of the movie, I sort of went through that before I made the movie. But sometimes things just don't work out. Or you learn new things. The tiger wouldn't do this as you imagine. He would do something else. There are better ways. So you change the script. It's an organic approach.
How is the final cut of Django different from what you initially wrote or envisioned?
And showed her. It's not. A better way to kind of describe it is when I'm writing. I mean, aside from yeah, for the most part, yeah. I don't think there is a caveat to this. When I'm writing, it's about the page. It's not about the movie. It's not about cinema or anything. It's about the literature of me putting my pen to paper and writing a good page and making it work completely as a literature document on itself. That's my first artistic contribution. And if I do my job right, by the end of the script, I should be having the thought, if I were to just publish this now and not make it, I'm done. I've done it. I could actually be okay with just saying that that's it. And then that can stand, and whoever wants to read it will read it, and I'm done. Now it's mine to F up if I go forward with it. Now, I always go forward with it, but I actually think for where I'm coming from, I want to love that script so much that I'm tempted to stop. I'm tempted to call myself a winner right then and there before I climb the mountain. So the point being of that is there's stuff that's in the script that I know will never ever make the movie, but it just makes the book, the piece of literature better. It's a better read. It's it's more emotionally satisfying. And then you can just like you do in an adaptation, you peel a lot of that stuff away.
See, this is interesting because learning to be a director, as I did from an actor, I was exposed to a lot of directors, other directors, which is something that directors don't really get, is to go on someone else's set and see how they work and stand by their monitor and listen to what they say. And one of the things that I found you can see here, which is that people have different things. I'm doing my script this way, I'm doing it that way, this is how I envision it, that's how I envision it. But what's absolutely common to all these guys, and why it's really cool for me, aside from hoping they hire me sometime, why it's really cool for me to be among these really great directors is because they're all guys who are pushing, where it's not enough. There's a huge swath of this business that's about look, tell me where the finish line is and I'll get there. What's the point? What's the goal? And I'll do it. That's not that. I'm writing a fucking book about my screenplay. You know what I mean? And it's only gonna be finished when it's a piece of literature. It doesn't need to be that to make a movie. Probably could make Django or Inglourious Basterds or any things without doing that. But it's about this extra thing. And that's what I learned, and that's what differentiated one part of my career from another, was understanding that you had to sort of just keep going in whatever capacity it was, shooting the end of the movie, reintroducing the elements from the novel into an incredibly successful musical that needed no additions.
Have you alienated people in doing that? Pushing for that extra?
I think the people that get alienated by that kind of don't understand, and what's really exciting for me is when I say, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, we're all going to live together, you take 2 weeks off your life, is the people who are oh yeah, let's do that, are the people that you want to work with. You go, yeah, you're with me, and the ones who say, hey man, I've done it before, I get to, you sort of, it turns you off, it turns me off. And I really think that what's greatness from the outside in arts, from the inside to me, just looks like really hard work.
What did you learn from Gus?
A lot. Gus was the first great director that I worked with, and I think the big thing I learned from Gus was, again, it was that idea of having a set goal. This is what you're supposed to do. You pack crates at a thing, you got to pack 12 crates every hour, and this you're going to meet your quota, and that's the way most of us sort of fit into our lives. And that's the way I looked at acting, was I have these lines, the director's going to tell me thumbs up, thumbs down, maybe they'll change the words, and I'll know good or bad, and we'll do a couple of takes, they'll be happy, we'll have a got it, and then we can move on. And then I remember I had these scenes, and we had read and rehearsed and practiced in my mind and stuff from Good Will Hunting, been writing 3-4 years, so I had every, 15 ideas about how to play each scene. I go through, like, do a take. Gus doesn't say anything to me. You know what I mean? So we do another take. Then nobody really says anything, and like, okay, we'll go again, and then nobody say anything, and I'm like, I really did not know what's going on. I had no experience with a relationship with the director where they didn't sort of come over and say, tut tut, or say like, oh good, let's do one thing. And I said, Gus, what did you think? And he was like, I don't know. What did you think? And right there, it was like this transforming experience where I realized, like, I'm responsible for my performance. I'm responsible for my life, my place in the creative universe. It's not about if these people tell me it's good enough, it's great, I guess so I've met this thing. It's about, like, my definition of that, how far I have to push towards that. And it was an incredibly meaningful.
I will ask you one question. It's now several years later. Did you think Ben would have this career when you worked with him?
Don't answer that.
Be honest.
I can't remember. I don't think that Ben said that he was interested. But later, I think, when you were making moves towards directing and Gone Baby Gone, I remember Ben was very...
I was grilling Gus. Yeah,
but you were very happy with the guy at the bar that says bullshit.
Yeah.
Because he was kind of... Just the way he did it seemed real. It wasn't particularly real. He was kind of a bad actor, but it just seemed really real. And I remember that you liked that, and that you told me that you liked mixing in non-professionals with professionals because you could get the verisimilitude.
Also, I was like, how the fuck did you deal with actors? At the time, I thought, I hate it when directors impose this fucking blocking on me. I'm going to come in and just play the scene how it should be. And don't worry about it. We're against the wall. Shoot it. That's how it, you know what I mean? It's organic. It's acting. And as a director, I started, well, John, maybe I was thinking you might kind of come in, you know what I mean? You have this, because you have a whole set of different criteria. And I remember asking Gus, like, I was having some issues, about like actors, and one actor wanted to like change the whole scene and rewrite this thing and transpose it to here, and I was like, well, what's your technique? I don't speak for you, and you can deny this if you, and I'll pretend that someone else told me, but you were like, yeah, I just do it. I was like, what do you mean, you do it? You like decide to go rewrite the scene and shoot it? He was like, yeah. I said, well, what happens? He's like, usually they lose interest or they forget, or then all of a sudden it's on them that they have to go shoot this new scene that was their idea, and they come back and go, I think maybe it'll work over here. So I found that a really interesting example.
But I find that you haven't really asked the question about how you imagined him at that point.
Well, when I saw Gone Baby Gone, I thought...
later.
Which was just, well, a little... maybe 10 years later, but still, it was a slow process. But... I thought that you had like done something that was way beyond like what I had tried to do with like mixing non-professionals with professionals. I was sort of jealous.
But you didn't imagine that when you did Good Will Hunting?
To make it like
that Ben would have that career.
Gus didn't even know my name on Good Will Hunting. Yes,
he did, 'cause you
the writers, the guys he was encumbered with.
I don't know. I'm always surprised when people choose to be directors, because it's kind of hard. I mean, it's kind of a weird job. And so when they actually choose, then you think to yourself, well, they're in for a lot of shit.
Well, it is a weird job. We were just talking about this, Matt and I, yesterday. Do you think directors are a bit crazy? Do you have to have a certain amount of craziness in you?
Like you have to have a lot of passion, and you have to be very strong.
Well, it's normal for us. I don't know if other people saw us being crazy. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, when I started Les Miserables, many people lined up to tell me not to do the singing live. Like there was a lot of good advice that the way I wanted to do it was I was going to come unstuck, and I couldn't. When I described the way I wanted to work, I would say that the world was probably more against me than for me, and but in the end you've got to go with your gut instinct and
well, it's a slightly different question from asking whether you feel you have a certain craziness in you.
Yeah, but I suppose that the answer to that is
crazy for doing it that way.
No, that's my point. Some people thought that was a crazy way to do it and literally couldn't see it. Whereas I thought acting is about the pure language of the present tense, and to act, you must look like the future is uncertain, and therefore if you sing live and the pianist is live, then as an actor, if you need to take 1/10 of a second to have an emotion or have a thought before you sing, then it becomes like dialogue and it becomes like film acting. And so to me it was self-evident, but to some parts of the world it was a madness.
So it's crazy to you have to be crazy enough to think out of the box at certain times, or else you might not make that jump.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I heard that you were doing it that way, and that's how Peter Bogdanovich did, I think, At Long Last Love, he did it live too. You know, I've never done a musical, and I don't know if I ever will, but I've always thought that if I ever did a musical, I would have to do it. There'd be no point in doing it unless I was doing it that way.
Is there a musical you'd ever want to do?
I would, no, there's no musical that exists right now that I'd want to do.
That would be so awesome.
It would.
I have musical sequences in all my movies, so I get out when the getting's good. But just even the sheer fact that, like, I'm really all about the day. I mean, if I'm sitting in my bedroom or on the balcony of my bedroom writing my script 9 months earlier, and I'm writing it.
Do you write longhand?
Yeah. And so I do all that, and so that's then, and we talk about it, and we do this, and we do the other thing, and now here it is 6 months later, and we're doing this scene, and we show up here, and it's Tuesday. To me, Tuesday is the most important thing about the scene now. It's not about what I was thinking about before. It's not, I mean, it's a little bit, obviously, but it's about today. Now we're here to do it. What happens today? How do I feel about it today? If one of the actors hits a dog on the way to the set in his car, all right, it's not the biggest tragedy in the entire world. It's a sad thing that happened to him. That needs to kind of fit its way into the scene, or else he's denying what's going on. And so we're trying to capture something. And so that's why I always thought, if I was going to do a musical, that Tuesday is important. So if something good happens, I don't want to think I'm going to erase all that and then loop it later. I'd want that moment, that day.
But you have to shoulder too much responsibility and burden to be, I think, really crazy as a director. It's so much work. There's a little more crazy in actors. There's like an actor who's a great actor, but who takes a Geiger counter and sees how radiated his wardrobe is. You know what I mean? That's like, a little nuts. Yeah. But he guy's also a genius. He does incredible stuff. So it's like, who gives a shit?
It's Matt Damon, right?
No, but also you're only as good as your powers of advocacy as a director. In that almost all your power comes with consent. I mean, none of us would have a contract where, if you really looked at it, we'd have any real power.
Well, many have final cards.
Yeah, but there were always caveats.
I think you mean with everybody on the whole movie, don't you? From the actors to the crew.
Yeah, and therefore I think you tend to spend a lot of your time.
Except to some extent. I mean, I thought it was very interesting with The Fighter, which, as you know, I love. But here's Melissa Leo, who wasn't, the easiest actress to work with, and made it very clear until she saw the film and won an Oscar. And then she said, you know what, David was right. So how much is advocacy and how much is imposing your will?
Yeah, you got to be strong. You got to stick to your guns, and you got to be patient, and let people have their choices.
Or don't.
Yeah, but then eventually you have to get the other choices, and you have to insist on that for their sake. And half the time you end up in the editing room, and I say, you know what, I'm glad they did their choice, because that turned out to be more right for me. So I don't always know what's right, but I know I got to try the one I'm feeling in my heart.
I want to go back to what Quentin Tarantino said, which really is fascinating to me, this idea of actually leaving the film business. Do any of you imagine that you will?
No, I want to die in the traces.
That's how I feel.
I love it too much.
I'm going to die with
I'll
a
go
camera in
until
my
I'm
hand.
too gagged out to do it.
Shooting a film. Like John Huston with the thing with that.
I don't know what to do.
Do you remember one of the last
for the dead.
Yeah, that's how I'm going to be.
As you talk about the insanity of doing it, I think about the insanity of not doing it. I mean, my unhappiest days have always been when I'm not making a film,
Yeah, I really, really lament and miss the disappearance of film, like literal film in the medium. But I am really drawn to it. I think at the end of the day, for most of us, you get the run that you get. You get to keep going. And usually the business shows you the door before the Grim Reaper does. But I like to keep working as long as I can.
Yeah, I wonder, like, if people are still going to hire you, but that's possibly will lighten up after, you get older. And if that's the case, there are other disciplines, I think, that are as fascinating, like theater or painting, or if that happens, or writing.
Mm-hmm. Where I'm coming from more than anything else is, I mentioned that the business is changing in a way I don't really like, and like I said, I don't like working towards diminishing returns. But also part of it is just the fact that when you asked, directors have a certain phase, and then maybe the tuning fork goes out. Well, it's.
I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't know. I don't know about the. I don't know about the.
Ever since then.
Yeah, I don't know about the tuning fork idea. But you are right for the most part, and we can all cite examples where it's not the case. But it's age. It's absolutely age. And when you look at, I'm really well versed on a lot of directors' careers, and when you look at those last 4 films, those last 5 films, when they were past it, when they were too old, and they're really out of touch with the times that are playing, whether it be William Wyler and the Liberation of L.B. Jones, or Billy Wilder with Fedora, and then Buddy Buddy, or whatever the hell.
Did you feel the same with Hitchcock and Family Plot?
Yeah, no, I definitely do, but he was a lesser offender in that regard. And actually, Frenzy is actually one of his last, actually there was something to Frenzy. It was like first time him working in an R rating, and it was actually kind of cool. But still, there's not a patch on some of his other films. But the thing about it, though, is to me, it's all about my filmography. And I want to go out with a terrific film. Death Proof has got to be the worst movie I ever make. And that's not and for a left-handed movie, that wasn't so bad. All right, so if that's the worst I ever get, I'm good. But I do think one of those out-of-touch, old, limp, flaccid dick movies cost you 3 good movies, as far as your rating is concerned.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. I also welcome, as a life challenge that's going to keep me with a spring in my step, the challenge of remaining emotionally relevant, and to remain compelling emotionally. I welcome trying to locate that in a place in myself that I can make into a movie, so that I think that has to do with how you live, and I may be proven wrong. I hope not, but I just think that it's a worthwhile endeavor for me to keep me young.
And I mean, the thing about it, though, is it's like, at the same time, if I write a book, I am working completely as an artist, and I love the idea of writing film criticism, writing auteur books on other directors and everything. And now, I'm not in the location van at 62. All right, I am not getting the call sheets and waking up early in the morning or all that kind of stuff. Because I'm old now, I'm not going out with the crew on Friday night and drinking with them. Well, that's part of it to me. All right, but that's just me. But I'm actually looking forward to becoming a man of letters. Which
director would you write your book about?
I'm already working on I've got a book on Sergio Corbucci that I'm working on. I wrote a little mini book on Don Siegel and Robert Aldrich's years in the 70s in Hollywood. I've just all these things like that. I'm writing a thing on George Roy Hill.
Oh,
yeah.
Can I
I love George Roy Hill.
Ignobly sort of disagree with you, because if I understand what you're saying about the whole filmography and one bad one, ruining 3 good ones.
It's a great point average, mate.
Yeah. But if you look at like great artists, if you look at great poets, Wordsworth wrote hundreds of terrible poems and 20 that were great. And I think you have to measure the artist by the handful of great work he does and accept that failure is part of the process.
Well, the thing is, I think I risk failure every single time with the movies I do, and I haven't fallen into failure. Risking failure is not what I'm afraid of. Failing is what I'm afraid of. But also, they're not the same thing. And I do think it's a young man's game. I really do.
I know. I have a friend who's like a very, talented and accomplished guy, and his thing is a little bit different. He's equally concerned with the bulk of the work and the optics of what that looks like and how it's perceived. But his whole thing is like anybody can fail. Only a few people can succeed. So judge me by my successes, not by my failures. And I don't know. It's a nice idea and it's a good logic. But I'm not sure it's true, to your point, that's how people actually do judge you.
I mean, I also have this little idea in my head, and then I'll stop talking about this bullshit. All right, is, the idea that, like the way I discovered Howard Hawks when I was 15, I saw Rio Bravo and thought it was fantastic. Then I ended up going to some film festival and I saw His Girl Friday. Then all of a sudden I'm at home and I noticed the movie called Barbary Coast is being played, and it said in the TV guide, directed by Howard Hawks, and so I watched that. Well, those 3 movies in a row really got me into that director, and and it really gave me, now I started seeking out his movies. I started getting the TV Guide every week to look for Howard Hawks movies until eventually I had seen them all, most of them. And so the thing is, I romanticized the idea, and that was in the 80s, all right, late 80s, early 80s. And Howard Hawks had long been dead. So I fantasize about another 12-year-old girl or boy 20 years after I'm dead, seeing one of my movies, liking it, who the hell did that, seeing another movie, and then whatever they choose from the pile, because they don't know what's good and what's bad, all right, I have to keep their dick hard. I have to keep them wanting to go back for more. They can't grab Buddy Buddy. They can't grab Buddy Buddy. That can't happen.
But that's happening at the moment. What is the weirdest or most interesting note or letter you've had from a fan? Or anybody?
I had a letter from someone in China that said they were glad what we did to the Japanese in Pearl Harbor.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I wasn't sure if they understood that it was a historical movie or what, you know what I mean? Or why they watched the movie.
Do you have strange pitches? Do people come up to you in the street and pitch, say, I've got a great idea? And if so, what's the most odd or interesting one?
I've had executives pitch me.
Yes?
Yeah.
What's the craziest pitch you've had?
One executive wanted to make a film about a bathroom attendant, which we wrote for him. And then...
Was there a story attached to this, or...?
A what?
A story attached?
Yeah, we made up a story. A bathroom attendant that would, like, take tips and give you a towel.
It's 3.5 hours.
It was really about the Wall Street crash, actually, what we ended up writing. And then he didn't do it.
And?
It's come to my head. It's not even a pitch. At a recent interview, this woman journalist, she just commented on it. At the end, she said, "I want to see you doing 50 Shades of Grey."
Starring or directing?
The movie, directing.
And your answer was?
I don't know what to say. So, that was kind of odd.
David, what about you?
I had since I just made a movie which has some bipolar behavior in it between Jennifer and Bob and Bradley Cooper. I had someone write me a letter that said they wanted to that I should make a movie about a bipolar superhero, and the letter itself was bipolar because it was delusional. But it was kind of halfway interesting. I mean,
last question, but then we're going to wrap up.
And their motto was, the motto of the superhero was, I hate being bipolar, it's awesome.
Wow. Actually, you know, I didn't think I had anything like that, and I actually did. This young girl, this young 14-year-old girl, wrote a little synopsis for Kill Bill Volume 3. Yeah, this 14-year-old girl wrote a synopsis for Kill Bill Volume 3 and what she wanted to do with the story, and she wanted to play the daughter grown up, or at least at her age. And I actually read it. I actually called her and thanked her for it because I thought it was just so sweet that the little girl liked the movie so much that she continued the story on herself. I always really hope that people take the story on themselves and take it to a different place and fill in the blanks that I didn't tell them about. That's why I actually don't like putting tons of scenes that change the story from the finished film on the DVD and stuff, because, well, that stuff didn't happen as far as they're concerned now. I don't want them to know all that stuff anymore. So the fact that she did that I thought was really charming.
So what candy do you put on your DVD?
What?
What candy do you put on your DVD then?
What candy?
Like extra stuff.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll maybe I might have an extra scene, but not one that changes the story. You know, that's part of the fun of editing. You take out something, and now the story is different.
But you'll put a deleted scene.
I'll put a deleted scene, but it's not one that it's. But if it's like a character or a past that changes it now that I don't want the audience to have that option, I don't want them to know.
Gus, are you like David Lynch? Do you not put any deleted scenes on your DVD? You don't show the magician's tricks?
I don't actually do it. We made a silent version of Restless, which was nice because we did so many silent takes that we cut together a silent version.
Oh my gosh.
Which was nice.
You could have beat the artist to the punch.
It was very easy to do a silent version of the Malick movie I did, because no one talked on set.
Yeah. You said the business is changing and has changed. What's the most striking change going on, and what change happened that you're really worried about? any of you.
Oh, just before, I have one more thing to say back to Quentin about his whole thing about the young man's game. First of all, I'm going to try to convince you to keep making movies because I love watching your movies. And second of all, I remember saying to Diane Keaton about 10 years ago, what is it with Woody Allen? I feel like his work had gotten shaky. And she said, I don't know. I don't know how many times you can go back to that well, like in fairness to him. You know, but the fact that Woody Allen every year gets up and makes a movie, I think that's a good way to live. And he hits a good average sometimes. I really loved Midnight in Paris, okay?
That was my favorite movie of last year, actually.
I absolutely loved it. And there's all these people I meet who hate it. And I'm like, I don't get it. But anyway, that's just how all movies are. But anyway, so I want to be John Huston with the tube in my nose, and I want you to be out there.
I'll be in either of those movies.
I think we actually have to wrap at that point because I got the shoulder tap. I want to thank Gus Van Sant, Quentin Tarantino, Ang Lee, Tom Hooper, Ben Affleck, David O. Russell. I loved having you all here, so I honestly hugely, hugely appreciated it.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having us, and it is a great privilege to be in the company of these people in this circumstance. And
well, it's especially great for the repeat offenders, and I'm trying to think, there are you, four repeat offenders, so hopefully Ang and Gus, you'll also be back.
This went, as I was observing before, we used to be like Charlie Rose, and now it's like the Playboy After Hours. You know? Yeah, it's like a little conversation.
Robert Culp and Sammy Davis Jr., Roger Moore.
Martinis. You're going to be here in 30 years' time, and I'll be like, wasn't he the guy?
Yeah, exactly.
Next time, why don't we do it in swings? Everybody's in swings.
Well, they put us in a great bar for the Actors Round. If you go online and see the Actors Round Table with Denzel Washington.
The actors get to like sit around and
Matt
get
Damon.
drunk, basically.
Yeah,
I see.
they did.
Just one another way that they're just free while we're all encumbered and responsible.
You're going to be in both of them, huh? Are you going to be in both?